keep failing forward if you do fail. Know that that's just an experience and that's going to help you in the future. And it's going to be a great talking point when you're talking about the next thing that you're doing, because there will be a next thing. I'm Michele Leardo. I work in education philanthropy. We do a lot of due diligence on organizations. We think a lot about the outcomes that they're having, which is really hard for a lot of organizations to sort of track. And sometimes they're not set up to do that. So maybe they need more capacity to create a data structure that would help them track these outcomes. But we really need to see that they're thinking about doing that and they're going to be able to track outcomes if they're not already. And then financial due diligence to sort of make sure that their sort of budget tracks annually and they have a trajectory to be sustainable. We think about our investments often as being catalytic. So we wouldn't want to invest in a startup and be 100% of their funding. And then if anything ever changed and our strategy shifted and we were no longer one of their funders, what might happen? So we like to see that folks have a path towards sustainability, whether that be on public funding or other avenues.
In your experience on reaching local communities, what would you say is one of the best ways to really interact with them and create this relationship with them to help them in the future?
I think being there in person and making connections is really helpful. Coming to them from a place of being open-minded and listening to kind of understand their unique needs, because every community is different and they're far enough along and they know what they want, they know what they need. And so then it would be your job to listen to that and then show them how your product can serve their community versus going to them and pitching something, assuming that it's going to be the right fit. So sort of starting with that listening ear.
How did you end up working at the place that you are today?
So right now my role is really exciting because I get to make financial investments and manage grants in K-12 education. I guess I've always loved children. And so when I graduated high school and was going off to college, I figured I should be a teacher and study that. I have teachers in my extended family, so it was sort of a job that I saw, that I knew people who were doing it. And then during college, I got to do 3 or 4 different experiences in student teaching in a range of environments, in suburban, urban, private, public. So then senior year, I was full-time student teaching in Boston public schools. I really loved it. I loved that population of students and sort of better understanding their backgrounds and sort of what they were bringing into the classroom and how they were learning. And then when I graduated from college, it was 2009. It was not a really good time in the economy. I had no job prospects here. So I moved abroad to Italy and got a job teaching in Rome. And I assumed that sort of teaching in a city school in Rome would be very similar to teaching in a city school in Boston. And it was really different. My students were really well off. It bothered me to sort of see those kinds of differences where my teaching was the same, what we were doing in the classroom was the same. So it was something else that was happening, that the students that I taught in Boston weren't sort of succeeding, but students in a wealthier neighborhood were. So that got me interested in thinking about education more systemically. Honestly, without having those student teaching experiences, I would have never sort of gotten to understand what I liked. If I was just studying education in the classroom, it wouldn't have meant much to me. So actually getting to go into a classroom and teach and learn about different types of students sort of made me realize that I was really interested in education. I wanted to stay in that field. And I just hadn't yet realized sort of the complexity of the education system and all the problems with it, to be honest. So getting to have those experiences and see it are what really solidified my love for kind of K-12 education and really improving a broken system that exists. So I got a master's in education policy and started doing research at New York University about sort of these contextual factors that influence students in the classroom, like crime, the neighborhoods they live in, if they eat breakfast in the morning before they go to school. Really interesting stuff, but I just felt disconnected from classroom and teaching and from students. So I wanted to do something that brought me a little bit closer again to communities and to schools and to people. So that's when I got interested in philanthropy and get to now work with a lot of organizations that are either school districts or they're supporting school districts or charter schools. And so it's really wonderful to get to see sort of a national perspective on sort of the issues that people are facing to help students in the classroom.
So when you were starting your career, was it working right away, or did it take time for you to figure things out?
It definitely took time. I felt like I was more loyal to the jobs I had, where I knew people in my generation that bounced around a little bit more. My first job I was in for 7 years. My current one I've been in for almost 6. So I definitely felt for me, I wanted to take time and sort of understand what is it about this role that I like and what is it about this role I don't like, and then start looking for other sort of industries or areas that I could work in that were more aligned to the places I liked. So for example, when I transitioned from academia to philanthropy, it took me probably a year and a half to get a job in philanthropy. So once I realized that being at a university was a little bit too far removed from K-12 education, and I was sort of just talking about research, but I didn't really see what it was improving in the classroom, and I wanted to be closer to folks that were doing the work in schools and in communities. I knew that program officers who had given me grants to do my research before kind of had that role. So I wanted to be like them and have their job. So I started connecting with folks that had funded my work just to have them in my network. I started using LinkedIn a lot and looking through other people's networks and would flag and say, hey, you know this person that works at a foundation, do you want to connect me? So I just sort of kept doing that very, very slowly. It was patience and sort of just making those connections and holding on to them, and then not being embarrassed to email somebody or call them after a year that we hadn't spoken, because people are really open to helping you get the career that you want.
What is like a piece of advice you would give yourself?
I think I would say to my past self 20 years ago, and what I would say to you is, you really can do anything. You really are smart. You really are capable. Keep talking to people, keep telling them your story, keep asking them their story. Follow those roads where they take you. It's so important to hear other people's stories, to share your own, and to keep those connections, because you never know when, you can use them again in the future. So I think connecting with people is the number one thing you can be doing right now. I think it does come back to, am I doing something that I feel is impactful? So even if it's really hard because right now it's demanding and I'm burnt out, that's okay. Maybe it doesn't mean I don't love it. I'm just tired right now. You can make a change even later in life. If it means getting a new credential, there's so many options now that allow you to get those credentials while you're still working and you still have an income. So it's never too late to change. It's much easier to change when you're younger and you're still exploring, but it's never too late, because I feel like our system is getting more and more flexible.